Amber, are there more agendas done by you?
Are there more what? I'm sorry?
I didn't know if they were on the table.
They went to get more down. Most of y'all are here for Barney Ewell. Tim Stuhldreher in P newspaper, in case anyone's wondering. Thought I'd get a shot of the crowded house before we get underway.
Amber, can you take a picture of Tim so people know who he is?
Just getting at it. Take a picture of Tim, take a picture of the people. And then a picture of exactly. We'll just keep it going.
That's what I'm thinking.
Good evening, everyone. We're going to get started in a moment. We're usually pretty timely, but we are making some copies so everybody who's here has the opportunity to have an agenda. So bear with us for a moment. So we'll get started momentarily. Good evening, everybody. I would normally be saying I have 6 o'clock, but I have 6:04, so forgive me on that. We're going to go ahead and get started with this evening's City Council Committee meetings. First, Mr. Harris, if you could call the roll of members, please.
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Valentine. Here. Ms. Gregg.
Here.
Ms. Diaz.
Here.
Mr. Rivera.
Here.
Mr. Smith-Williamson.
Here.
Mr. Soto.
Here.
And President Reichenbach.
Here. Approval of the July 1st, 2019 committee meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Council comments from the public. Hearing none. Mr. Harris.
Mr. Valentine.
Aye.
Ms. Gregg.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz.
Aye.
Mr. Rivera.
Aye.
Mr. Smith-Williamson.
Aye.
Mr. Soto.
Aye.
And President Reichenbach.
Aye. Before we go into Personnel Committee, I'm going to turn it over to Councilor Smith-Waddell for an exciting introduction. Council.
Yeah, thank you, President Reichenbach. I just wanted to take a moment to welcome this wonderful and large class of would-be citizens that we have at the end of the committee room. and just applaud them for reminding us exactly what it is that this great nation is about. So I just thought we would take a moment and give them a round of applause.
Should they raise their hands so we know who they are?
Yeah, if they want. Go ahead, Councilor Rivera.
If you could just raise your hand so we can all know who you are exactly, how many of you are?
Spirit.
Great.
That's impressive. Thank you guys so much for putting in the work. Thank you for taking the time to get civically engaged. And thank you for knowing this is the third or fourth such class you've brought here to our exciting committee meetings, and we appreciate it. Thank you. President Reichenbach, that's all I have.
Thank you, and thank you for coming. You're always welcome here anytime. You can come to any meeting you like. Please feel free to continue to bring your classes. We'd be more than welcome. Thank you for being here. So we will move into Personnel Committee. Councilor Diaz.
Yes, Mr. President, I have Susan Blackman. She's nominated for appointment for the Board of Health. I'd like to make a motion.
So approved.
And is she here today?
Yes, yes.
Right here. Over here. Come on down.
Hey, if you can make your way out.
Say yes safely.
We did our best to barricade you in, but
Please have a seat here.
If you can tell us a little bit about yourself.
My name is Sue Lackman. I work in the Community Health and Wellness Department for Pine Medicine, Lancaster General Health. I've been there for 15 years. For people who don't know, that's the arm of the hospital that does community outreach. My primary focus is on prevention. I do a lot of work with tobacco and opioid resources, work in the schools, getting evidence-based programming in there. And how much do you want to know?
Is there any questions from the committee?
Just curious what you do in the schools and how often?
Well, in the schools, we provide the Botman Life Skills curriculum, which is an evidence-based curriculum that targets students in grades 3 through 8. In the city schools, the middle school has, for the past 5 years, had a grant that they've been able to provide it. And we have been providing it in the elementary schools, most of the elementary schools, for some of them since 2002.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I just want to thank you for agreeing to be on the health board and for all the work that you do now in the schools and in the community. And for that, I thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Any questions from the mayor?
Yeah, I know Sue. We work together closely on various efforts to join Forces Coalition to opioid relieving.
Any questions from the public? Or what team is that? I don't know.
He's over there.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for coming. I'd like to move this then to full council on the 13th.
Second. Wait, you already had that.
Yeah, we already had that. It's just a vote.
The vote to
For the committee.
all in favor?
Aye.
That's
Thank you, Sue.
Thank you.
I also like to make a motion for the council resolution for the 2019 supporting the United Nations Declaration of Rights of Indigenous People. Now, I'm not sure if Mr. Keen Rod sent a representative at all.
Second.
Then I'd like to move this then to full council on the 13th. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And at this point, that's all I have.
Thank you. We will move right into the Public Works Committee with Councilor Rivera.
Thank you, Mr. President, and with great pleasure, I'd like to introduce Council Resolution Number 36, 2019, changing the name of Lancaster Square to Ewell Plaza. Is somebody here to
Second.
speak on it? Yeah, John?
Good evening, and my name is John McMahon. I am a member of I'm a board member on the Lancaster Public Art Board, or Public Art Advisory Board, And so I'm here to spend a few minutes describing how we came to this recommendation. What I'll tell you is, we got the opportunity to work on this as part of our work, where we were also involved with some other aspects of how the vision for Lancaster Square is coming together from a design standpoint. And we were asked to lead the effort to rename the plaza, or at least come prepared with a recommendation to you. So Joe Davis, the public art manager, and I collaborated on an RFP. We published the RFP, and in the end we received 2 proposals and one sort of letter. The 2 proposals came from the Barney Ewell Committee. They had a strong proposal with widespread community support and a great deal of supporting information. We also received a proposal from Greg Scott. Greg Scott is a local architect who has passion for the history of C. Emlyn Urban in this city, and he presented us with a proposal for Urban Square. And then we also received a letter from Nelson Polite's family asking us for an opportunity to address this. So we gave all 3 groups an opportunity to come to our meeting. We heard from the Ewell Committee and from Greg Scott in our June meeting, and we had an opportunity to listen to Deborah Polite at our July meeting. We had lots of great input, lots of great feedback, and some good discussion as a board. And in the end, we made a unanimous recommendation that we proposed Ewell Plaza. I think the specific language is that Lancaster City Council, well, and actually I want to add one extra comment. The one thing that really struck us, and this came out of our presentation from Deborah Polite, was they would love to see some opportunity to honor her father and her grandfather, quite honestly, at this location. She spoke pretty eloquently about the Lancaster Public Library and the opportunity for some sort of a civil rights presence to take place at the Lancaster Public Library. So the final recommendation that we came up with was that Lancaster City Council rename Lancaster Square to Ewell Plaza, with a recommendation that they also collaborate with the Lancaster Public Library to explore naming opportunities at this location in honor of Nelson Polite Sr. So that was the process, that was the outcome, and I'd be happy to discuss this further or answer any questions you have about how we got here.
So for transparency purposes, this was just a straight up vote by the committee, correct?
That's right.
Was there an online poll taken?
There were, late 2018, there was the newspaper, I think, organized an online poll. At that point, we hadn't even published our RFP, so I think that was, I think it was interesting from the standpoint of understanding where support lied. I think in that poll, it was, the options were Barney Ewell. I think there was an option for Thaddeus Stevens. At that point, there wasn't anything else out there, was there? Yeah, I think those, or the opportunity to propose an alternate name.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the other thing is maybe worth just commenting on is that we did. It really belies the challenge of getting a lot of public input about something like this, and throughout the process last summer of soliciting community feedback about what people wanted this plaza to look like. We asked people for suggestions about names. We asked people for a lot of input about how the plaza should serve our community. It's a challenge getting people to really be outspoken sometimes, maybe not all the time. But,
yeah, that was just my question.
Yeah.
How much public input did you see?
Yeah. I think most of what we heard was in the way of the support demonstrated by the Ewell Committee. They provided us with many letters of support. Those are available. I'd be happy to share those with City Council. We really assigned that burden to the applicants. We in our RFP, we asked them to demonstrate community support. We asked them to talk about how the name could inspire future opportunities for public art to be featured at this location. And really the Ewell Committee did the hardest, best work when it came to that, and really assembled a proposal that showed us that they at least had a significant portion of this community behind them.
That they did.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
There was also a petition for at least 600 signatures.
That's right.
Right.
Yep.
Questions from committee? Ms. Steels and Ms. Craig.
Make a motion.
Second.
Just comments.
Oh, comment. I'm sorry.
Yeah, can you go?
From the public.
Councilor Guerrero, can I just mention that, thank you for the recommendation of the representation within the library for the Southeast. I sit on the library board currently, and we've already begun conversations about how we can make sure the Southeast is represented, and specifically the leaders who made so much of a change in our community. So as the new libraries kind of roll out, those conversations are going to be evolving and happening, and I'm sure there'll be a significant amount of public input when we talk about what it's going to look like. But thank you for that. That's already happening.
And you may already know this, but to be clear, I mean, the Blight family indicated that they may be able to help organize some financial support if it comes to that. So bear that in mind when you talk to the library too.
Great. Thank you.
I'm sorry I skipped over the rest of council. Any other comments from council?
I'll just say, sitting on the Public Art Advisory Board with John, wanted to compliment John and the rest of the board, in particular for, I think, handling with significant aplomb what was, an important, it's high stakes and occasionally contentious process. I do want to say thank you to you for that. This is we're kind of getting our feet wet in approaching public naming in this way, and they did a fantastic job.
Thanks, I appreciate that. Yeah, but I think, to me, I should say, the part that I found the most gratifying is how unified the board was, in that discussion. Really, it was other members of the board who contributed their voice to the discussion and really made it easy for this recommendation to come together.
Anyone else? Public? The press? Now I'll take a motion.
Motion to approve?
There's been a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thanks, John.
And that'll be on the agenda for the 12th. Administration Resolution Number 39, 2019, authorizing the winter services agreement with PennDOT.
Yeah, I
Speak
guess
on
I'll
that.
speak to that. This is an annual occurrence, and this is basically entering into an agreement with PennDOT to just make sure that snow and ice, which hard to imagine that we're talking about snow and ice right now, are removed from our state highways that are located within the winter seasons for 2019, from 2019, 2022, 2023, 2024. And it's pretty much that straightforward.
How long has the city had the service agreement with PennDOT?
Forever. Many decades, in large part because there are major thoroughfares, obviously, through the city that are state roads, and so this is an understanding of who's maintaining what in a snow emergency, a snowstorm.
So do they do their part?
Yes.
Any other questions from committee? From council? From the public? Hearing none. All in may I have a
Motion. Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And Administration Resolution Number 41, 2019, requesting the multimodal grant for the Greater Lancaster Heritage Pathway.
So this is something that we've been working on for a while in terms of how are we making the connections between the active transportation plan recommendations and the downtown itself. We are applying to the Multimodal Transportation Fund grant for the amount of $1.3 million to figure out the eastbound connection. And that connection is, as you may have heard, that the westbound connection is Walnut Street. The eastbound connection was going to be Chestnut Street as a matched pair. In the initial review from Kittleson Associates, we learned that the stacking issues on the eastbound side would be significant, such that the traffic would be wading through multiple light cycles, and there is more volume of traffic that leaves the city on the eastbound side. So this is really to help us figure out what the eastbound connection is going to be and how we are going to make that connection and then to fund it.
Thank you, Mayor. Any questions from committee? From council? From the public? From the public? Hearing none? May I have a motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. And that concludes Public Works Committee.
And we're going to keep it rolling right into Finance Committee with Councilor Valentine.
Thank you, Mr. President. Finance has 2 items on the agenda tonight, and we'll begin with Administration Resolution number 35, authorizing the sale of a former police forensic van.
Okay. This resolution just is a sort of a record-keeping issue. We have a forensic van, former forensic van, that we were initially going to be trading in for a replacement so that the police could upgrade their, the van that they use and the equipment inside for their forensic unit. Then at some point in the last 3 months or so, we were contacted by East Lampeter Township Police Department that was interested in the possibility of purchasing our forensic unit from us. We could actually make the sale to East Lampeter Township for a little bit more than what we were going to get as a trade-in. However, Third Class City Code requires a resolution of City Council when a sale like this is happening between the city and another municipal entity and without having gone through a sealed bid or other auction process. So as I said, this is really more of a paperwork issue. It's a good opportunity for City Police Bureau to cooperate with East Lampeter Township Police Department and have them get a piece of equipment that will serve them well for the next however long. And offsets the cost of our forensic unit that will be purchasing.
Upon passage of the resolution, how big the turnaround?
I think that turnaround is going to be fairly quick. I don't remember when we're actually going to be purchasing the new.
It's already purchased, the new one. It's being upfitted with equipment.
That's right.
Right now.
Okay.
Any questions from the committee? Full count.
I want to reiterate again how cool it is that we're working with our surrounding municipalities. I feel like we've done that more in the last 6 months than I remember us doing a lot. I know we've tried for a long time, but it seems to be coming to fruition. That's really cool. So,
Well, we should give some credit to Captain Todd Umstead, who's been working on this with East Lampeter Township. So it's working well. Really cool.
Any questions from the public?
Sale price?
14,000.
14,000?
Yeah. Any other questions? Hearing none, I make a motion to move to full council.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. And the second item on our agenda is Administration Bill number 14, authorizing financing of fire station construction through borrowing by a bank.
I just had to get this swag out there in front while we're sitting here. I'm going to ask Darrell Peck to come up. Bill, I don't know if you need to come up or not, but what the heck, might as well. So Darrell Peck from Concord Public Finance, you've met multiple times before, and Bill McCarty from Barley Snyder, who's our bond counsel on this financing. A little bit of background. We started discussion here last month with a sort of conceptual discussion about the opportunity for the demolition and new construction of 2 new fire stations, one at the East King Street station site and one at the West King Street station site. We were looking at 2 possible options for financing. One was through a bank note, and the other was through a bond issue. And we've been down this road several times with the council looking at both of those options. For this particular financing, Concord, on our behalf, put out a request for proposals from banks in mid-July. We received a total of 7 proposals from 3 banks. The last week of July, and Darrell passed these out. You will see on the first numbered page of this that we got, the best proposal was from a bank named ACNB, which I believe is Adams Cumberland National Bank. It's a Gettysburg-based bank. The financing, the total amount of the financing here is $9 million, with the idea that in addition to this financing, we would also have opportunity of financing from the state RCAP program, from 2018 bond funds that we can move from other projects, and possibly from general fund reserves. So this financing itself is proposed to be $9 million. On numbered page 1, so the second page of the handout that Darrell just passed out, you see highlighted the ACNB Bank proposal, which is a combined proposal. It has a 10-year fixed rate portion and then a 10-year variable rate portion. This was the best of the proposals that we received. The 10-year fixed rate portion is 2.82%, and then the current variable rate would be 3.887. The maximum that it could ever be, based on a cap in the proposal, is 5%. Darrell and I reviewed this last week, and looking at this opportunity for financing versus the bond issue option, made the determination that, we're making the recommendation to City Council that we only pursue the banknote proposal. And the main reason for that is that the banknote versus a bond issue, one, the comparative possible rate out of a bond issue, while always up to market changes between now and when an auction would actually happen, are anybody's guess, especially given today with a, whatever, 750-point drop in the Dow and all sorts of stuff going on. You know, we're never guaranteed of what that bond rate is going to come out of the auction. The proposal that we got from ACNB is quite a bit better than what we were originally anticipating. With a on that rate, if you look, there's a column there titled "All-in Borrowing Rate at Cap." So the worst case scenario on the banknote proposal is, over the 20-year life of this loan, 3.437% interest rate. So the advantages of going this banknote versus the bond issue route, the biggest advantage really is in the fact that we have a 2-year draw period on this loan. So for the first 2 years, we would only be paying interest on funds that we drew down during that first 2 years. We have to draw everything down with by the end of that 2-year period. Because of the fact that we have other financing sources that we're going to be putting to this project, let's say we use some of the 2018 bond funds. We're already paying debt service, obviously, on that issue. We would probably use those funds before we would draw down any funds here. If you flip to the second page of what I handed out, is just the assumptions and uses of funds. Pretty straightforward. It's a $9 million financing with about $40,000 of estimated issuance cost. On the third page of this, and Darrell can expand on this some, but I want to focus you on the box at the top right-hand part of the page there. What this is looking at is a comparison between a 100% drawdown day one of the when we would close on this, versus drawing down about $375,000 a month during the construction period of the project. And that savings in drawing down over the period of the first 2 years would be about $260,000 of savings. If we were to do this as a bond issue, we would basically be incurring interest 100% right away because we'd be drawing down the entire amount of the bond issue. So that's really the main advantage of the bank note versus the bond issue. I want to jump over to Darrell here so he can talk about some of the other numbers on this page, and then I'll show you and talk a little bit about the graph on the last page.
Thank you, Patrick, and good evening, Mr. Councilman there. Just touch on one more thing, maybe about the bank loan as well, but it's also prepayable at any time without penalty. So, should at some point in time you want to pay off, sort of money falls out of the sky, or second, more importantly, if rates actually become lower in the near term, when I say you could pay it off, you'd also refinance it or basically lock in a more favorable rate. So, again, even when you look at that cap rate, sort of on the back end, again, that's a worst case basis. With a bank loan, you can actually even renegotiate or refix the rate without going through an entire process of doing refinancing. So certainly there's a lot of upside in this proposal as well. Keeping on page 3, where Patrick left us, he already alluded to the upfront savings. Sort of the box on the left-hand side is the structure of the borrowing of the $9 million. You can see that we've already assumed, again, the 2.82% and the 5% cap. So that presentation is a worst case basis. This is structured around, and you've seen this before on many of your other financings, that's what people refer to as a wraparound debt service, meaning it takes into consideration your existing debt service and existing general fund debt service. Your existing general fund debt service is found in column 7. In 2020, it'll be about $5.9 million. The following year, it'll be about $6.2 million. So we've really deferred some of the repayment of this new loan until after your debt service drops off to have really a reasonable and sort of minimalist impact to your general fund budget. Column 8 shows the resulting general fund debt service, so your existing debt service, column 7, and your new debt service in column 6 of this new loan. Overall, in column 9, we show really the full impact to the general fund budget as a result of this financing, and sort of growing on top of your $6.2 million you currently have. Your overall increase will incur in that highlighted number $350,000, and really just stay there until debt service drops off in 2030. So the question always is, what's my full budgetary impact of doing this borrowing? The answer is $350,000, and you incur that or realize that in your 2022 budget. Debt service will still drop off, and I think Patrick wants to talk about this more. It's usually easy to see a picture of the numbers, but focus on the box sort of in the middle of the page. Your debt service is going to drop by about $2.2 million about 10 years from now. So there's still a lot of budget flexibility or budget capacity or future capital needs capacity in what's a relatively near term, 10 years. I know everybody says that's 10 years from now, but there's certainly certain situations where you see somebody's debt service stay at the same number for the next 20 plus years. So even in doing this modeling of this financing, we're still keeping an eye out forward to, let's retain some capacity for the next projects coming down the road. And a picture's always easier than numbers on a page, so.
Yeah, I'm sorry, before you jump there, I just wanted to throw 2 other pieces of information. One is, Darrell talked about on the left-hand side is the schedule of this financing. If you look under column 2, the principal installment, you see that it grows, the first year in 2021 is $5,000 of principal payment, and then that grows over the life of this issue. The concept here is that we're, as Darrell said, wrapping around the current debt service schedule. We're building 2 new fire stations that we would like to think are going to last 40, 50, 75 years. We're financing that with a 20-year loan. So it makes sense to have more of the principal repayment pushed out into the later years of this borrowing. One, because we have a big drop off in debt service in 2030, but also just because of the life of this project. When we've done some of these other bond issues, we're financing projects, some of which might be 10 or 15 year lifespan, and others that are 20, 30, 40 year lifespan. In this case, the entire financing is really to be put toward those 2 new fire stations, and because we know the life of this is going to be a lot longer than the issue, we feel comfortable pushing that debt service out a little bit. The other is that you'll see in column 9, or actually column 8, where in 2020 the debt service, existing debt service, or debt service after this note, it goes from $6,172,000 in 2020 to $6,472,000 in 2021. The reason for that increase is, and this is going to sound a little strange, but it's because of savings from the refinancing that we did earlier this year. In February, we refinanced the 2009 bonds, and we had a total savings from that refinancing in the general fund of about $840,000. About $535,000 of that was savings in 2019 that we achieved versus budget. There's an additional $305,000 of savings in 2020. So that increase that you see from 2020 to 2021 is a result of that savings. It's a little easier if you look at the graph on the next page that we were going to flip to. On this page, the red bars are the current debt service, and the green bars are the debt service. And this is based on that worst case scenario of 100% drawdown. Correct. Right away.
And as well as the cap.
Right. And the cap. So what you see here is that increase in 2020, which we could possibly all but erase because of that issue with the drawdown of the funds, and we wouldn't be paying interest during the time that we're not drawing the funds down. And then you see the red bar go up to 2021. Again, that's that increase because of the savings that we took in 2020. And then from there on out, the green bars are relatively flat. This is really where you see the dramatic drop off in our debt service out 10 years. So the relatively small difference between the green bar and the red bar for those first 10 years is a result of us paying a fairly low amount of principal in that first 10 years. You see the difference grows beginning in 2030 and out for the rest of the term of the bonds. And that difference is a result of paying back more principal later on in the bond issue. But that, it's 10 years from now, but that drop off in debt services is significant. You see it on page 3 that our debt service drops from about $5,568,000 with this financing down to $4.3 million with this financing. So it's a about $1.1, $1.2 million drop off because of the way our debt service is scheduled. So with all that, I'd open it up to any questions that you might have. I guess I should note that Bill McCarty got all of this information in advance. Maybe one other benefit to note about doing it this way is with all the information in the draft ordinance, there is no significantly long amendment that would need to be made upon adoption because we've got all the information in there in the first place. No 3-page amendment to do. I don't know, is there anything else, Bill, in terms of the ordinance that we should be addressing?
Nothing that I can think of. There is a blank schedule, Exhibit B. That will be the maximum debt service schedules for this issue. That's assuming you took it all down at one time. You actually wound up paying 5%. But the state has to approve as part of the application the total debt service you're approving. So we have to give them a schedule that does that. And we have to give them a max schedule. So that will be, as far at this point, that's the only change to this ordinance between now and if you
Patrick, just for my own sense of mind, what is the total cost of all fire stations?
Well, we don't know yet. The bids are out right now. We have bids out for both stations to be done at once, and also an alternate, which would just be doing one of them at a time. And we want to, basically out of that, we get to see what the extra bang for the buck might be for having one contractor get both of them at the same time. The total all-in project amount that we're working with right now is $11.5 million, and that includes the demolition, the construction management. That's an all-in cost. So with this financing, we'd have $9 million of the $11.5 million. We'll know that number for sure, obviously, after we get bids back and do the bid review.
And the other 2.5 will be coming from the general fund?
Combination of the car cap option, the 2018 bond issue with being able to move some funds around within that, and then the third option would be general fund reserves.
And you feel comfortable that the 9 million cap would be sufficient?
Yes.
Thank you.
More than sufficient.
More than sufficient?
And I just want to comment on the fire stations themselves. The city has been working through a list of capital projects, improvements from City Hall expansion to a new operations center to the fire stations. And the design of the fire stations really takes into consideration and utilization of the full footprint of the property that we already own. And so if you haven't seen the designs for the fire stations, we're talking about 3 bays on the first floor. Both the East and the West King sites will mirror each other. They're basically the same design. All of the turnout gear, locker rooms, and so on are on the first floor, which has real benefit in terms of keeping the health and safety of our officers in terms of all the carcinogens and whatever that they're maybe bringing back with them from a fire. The living quarters are all on the second floor, and then there's a mezzanine that has a fitness space as well as meeting space, training room. That's part of it. So there are economies of scale by both by bidding them at the same time. We hope, we're going to test that, and then also using the same design, same material, same everything. So East and West King will be mirrors to one another. And these are long overdue. I think we've all been in the fire stations. We all know the kinds of conditions that our firefighters are working in, how cramped the quarters are. And, you know, we are now spending money on making repairs that, you know, it's just throwing good money after bad, because the structures themselves are, they've done their time. So we feel good about moving forward with this plan, and I'm excited to get the move on.
Only other thing I'd add is that for the timing of this financing, the closing would be in mid-October, which would line up well with when bids would be back reviewed, and we would be ready to award bids for either both stations or one station at a time.
With the addition of the state approval, any concerns there that it would cause a delay or?
No, everything, the bid packets were included with the anticipation that any requirements that would come with state funding would already be met by the contractor. So we don't expect any delays there because of that.
And I'll just let you all know now, we have received $500,000 of RACP funds to go toward the construction of the fire stations. That was short of our request. We requested $4 million, and I'm continuing to work with our state senator and state representative to understand a little more about the decision-making that went into that process. The good news is that we can keep going back and asking for additional funds, which you can bet that we are going to do. And we can actually even have the project finished and still request funds to support the construction costs. So I imagine that I'm going to continue to ask and work to make sure that we receive additional dollars in the next round of RACP funds.
Great. Well, I just appreciate your office's attention to all of these things, so thank you. Any other questions from the committee?
I have a question. Patrick, do you foresee any issues in the future with the market, especially with, I would say, the problems down in Washington with the Chinese and their market also.
So, two answers, and I'll ask Daryl to jump in or correct me if I get any of this wrong. But in terms of the bidding itself, the biggest issue that's out there is the cost of steel, and whether or not tariffs that get placed, get tweeted about, get whatever, has an impact on what that market is going to be. That's one of the reasons that we wanted to move forward as quickly as possible as we could with getting the bids out, so that contractors typically, if they can lock in commodity prices with early on, that at least saves us and saves them, because there's less uncertainty if they know they've got 2 significant projects that they have to build. They can go out, they can purchase the commodities now and do the project over a 2-year period, because we're, I think, anticipating 9 to 12 months for the construction of each project, each station. On the market side of things, today's upheaval and whatever upheaval may come down the road would not have an impact on us to a significant extent, just because this locks in a fixed rate for 10 years, and then even though it's a variable rate, it's a cap of 5%. 5% is higher than rates that we're paying right now, but if we would hit that cap, it means something has changed pretty significantly in the world. So we're protected there on the upside. The only other piece of it is the uncertainty of, could we get a better, or would we end up having a worse rate out of the bond auction? That's very much a crystal ball in all the upheaval that's going on right now, and we just made the decision that it made sense to go with the horse and the results that we had in front of us, rather than risk having something else happen with some small possible upside.
Thank you, Patrick.
Any other questions for full council? Or the public? Jim?
So, Patrick, in the previous presentation, you talked about issuing this with the idea that if we did get RCAP funding, we would be able to offset some of the finance. Is that still the case?
Yes, it is still the case if we're able to get more than $500,000 out of the RCAP program. So if in around next year we would achieve additional funding through RCAP, we would be able to, reduce our use of other funds, or put some of these funds, the borrowed funds, 2019 borrowed funds, toward other projects.
Anticipated start date?
I believe, I think the bid award date would be in mid-October. There's staging and all that sort of stuff, but demolition would probably start happening soon thereafter.
We're going to try to work really hard to get the demo completed and to do some of the concrete work before we have significant freeze.
And Black Lagoon?
TBD.
No change in status?
No change in status, unfortunately.
Thank you very much.
The clock is ticking, though. We have a 30-day. You're aware of the eminent domain proceedings and so on. Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you, gentlemen. It's time to make a motion to move to full council.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that concludes finance.
Thank you. We'll move right into Economic Development Committee with Councilman Craig.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have one item on the agenda tonight. It's Resolution 34, prohibiting video gaming terminals. If I'm not mistaken, I think we spoke about this last year. And this is a resolution to confirm and update opting out.
Yes. Is it okay if I add a little bit of context?
Go right ahead.
So a few years back, we had the option when casinos were coming down the pike. Municipalities had the option to opt out if they chose to, and we absolutely chose to opt out of that. Over the last few years, there have been several other gaming opportunities that, in the state's wisdom, they decided to add on and offer. And one of those that was gaining traction was video game terminals at truck stops and other small places. With the recently passed legislation, once again, we have the opportunity to opt out if we want to. Clock is ticking, so by the middle of September, municipalities have to make a decision, or there's an assumption that they opted in. Just for context, I had to clarify this myself, but in case you've been to a bar or a restaurant lately and you've seen people playing games where they were making money from it, this is not that, so this would not pull those out. It's a very nuanced difference, but technically those aren't games of chance, they're games of skill. So there's a skill level to those which makes them different than what we're talking about here. So if anybody asks you, they have to get theirs pulled out, that's not this. This would simply be legitimate games of chance that would not be coming into the city if this resolution gets passed.
Thank you. Another part of that is, I think we're on a deadline because of our summer season. We have until September 3rd to get this in. It needs to be in front of the Gaming Control Board. So, are there any other questions from the committee?
With adoption of this resolution, like how long would it last? Is this actually has to be reviewed annually or? No,
That's good. So, and there are several other senators that have signed on to opting out, and Governor Lopez has already signed and, recommended that the body of Pennsylvania controls opt out. So, any questions from the public?
And I'll just mention, Councilor Craig, again, we talked about how we opted out unanimously. Every municipality in the entire county opted out of the casinos.
Yes.
And it sounds as though most of them are going this direction as well, so we're certainly in step with our colleagues. And I mean, just for me personally, it goes back to the same thing we talked about with the casinos, is it takes advantage of the least among us. It's a wrong way to develop revenue, and it's silly that we continue going down the rabbit hole, which is exactly what was predicted when we opened up casino gaming, that there would be every little way to try to expand it once the money ran out or started going thin. So I'm certainly supportive of keeping it out.
Absolutely. Tim?
I'm pretty sure there's a couple of these games currently in the city, so what would be the enforcement procedure once this is passed?
I can't speak to whether or not they're these exact ones. The ones that I've seen in the city and we followed up on were ones that were skill, not chance. I don't even think these particular terminals have been released yet. I think they're specifically coming from the state. As far as I know, these are coming from the state gaming board and not private machines. But I could be wrong. These are actually connected directly.
The ones I'm speaking about are marketed under the name Pennsylvania Skill. Are we not talking about those?
We're not talking about those because those are games of skill, not games of chance. No, look, I'm not disagreeing with you.
Yes.
That's the nuance that they've allowed in this legislation to allow this to take place.
So as far as council knows, these games are not in the city at this time.
As far as I know, they are not, and they would have to get, because the state gaming board has to release them. Once that we have chosen not to opt out, and then they're connected directly to the state gaming board. I think they're constantly connected to it. So that would be a pretty cool trick if they did that. Yeah, so I don't think so. I think that's your question.
Thank you.
There's a June 11th piece in your publication on the games of skill, on efforts in the state legislature to ban those by Gillian McGoldrick. I don't know who that is, but I assume you do.
About 4 seats down.
Yeah, great. We actually just dealt with something like this on the Planning Commission. Lancaster Township bans these in their zoning ordinance. What is he? Commissioner Bamford essentially did end up going into a gas station and letting them know that what they did have were in fact non-conforming with the zoning ordinance. So these games of chance, the video gaming terminals, they do exist and they are being marketed. For what it's worth.
You know, I'd like to know how we can tell games of chance from games of skill. How can we tell the difference? You gotta do research. Okay.
I would contact Pennsylvania Gaming Board.
Okay.
Because I know there are townships that surround us. I know Strasburg Borough is after, because they're concerned about the games of skill that have been showing up in Sunoco stations, and they're fighting with rudders pretty hard to keep that stuff out.
We have the games of skill in the city. Isn't it? The games of the ones that we don't want.
We don't want any of them.
I prefer not to have any of them. The ones that are allowed are technically games of skill.
Right.
The ones that we're stopping now are games of chance, but they're both taking money out of people's pockets. I guess unless you win, of course. Who actually wins, let's be fair.
Any other questions? Call for motion to move this to council.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. We will move in the Public Safety Committee with Councilor Soto.
At this time, I'd like to open our Public Safety Committee. We have two items on the agenda. Resolution number 37, adopting the city's 2019 Emergency Operation Plan, and resolution number 42, requesting the JAG grant for the U.S. Department of Justice. And who will be speaking on number 37?
Go for it.
Thank you, Chief, and welcome.
You bet. Good evening. So what we're doing here and asking for your passing of resolution 37, adopting the 2019 Emergency Operations Plan for the city. What this does, it's a plan that establishes a doctrine and principles for how the city will operate during emergency management programs and emergency incidents. This fundamental document describes how the city government will organize and act to protect lives and property in the event of emergencies and disasters. The Emergency Operations Plan is detailed with the way our policies and procedures apply to the management for all hazard events, to include natural disasters, accidents, acts of terrorism, and other significant incidents within the city. The scope of the plan extends from pre-incident preparedness, prevention, mitigation, and response, and then our recovery efforts. We started our pre-incident preparedness last week with the mayor's executive team as we have them going through their NIMS training and compliance. And then the emergency operations plan will serve as the base plan throughout which the city's portfolio of our hazard-specific and fundamental plans are activated and executed. The plan outlines our concepts, our organizational structure, our general rules and regulations. Does anybody have any questions?
Chief, there's no major difference between this and the old plan, correct? Other than the changing of who the leadership will be as it carries down, since you're going to be in the field.
That's correct. And then our plan also aligns with the Lancaster County EMA office.
In conjunction with that.
Correct.
Any questions from the committee?
You already asked mine.
Any questions from the rest of the city council? Any questions from the public? In this case, I'll entertain a resolution to move this to full council on the 13th.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next item on the agenda is administration resolution number 32, and I believe the chief will be speaking to this one. Thank you, Chief, and welcome.
Good evening. So the JAG grant is money that we get annually. That's divided between all the law enforcement agencies throughout the county. Our grant total is going to be approximately $47,825. And we're going to be using that to purchase Penlink software, 6 desktop computers, and then we have to allocate about $1,400, which is 3% of the total grant to NIBRS compliance, which is what's going to become the federal government's UCR, or Uniform Crime Reporting. It's now going to eventually be NIBRS. The software is approximately $40,000, and then we'll be buying 6 desktop computers for our patrol area at about $6,000. The software is basically allows us to investigate data, digital data from cell phones, social media. Allows us to go through it historically rather quickly, and allows us to prepare that information for court. And a lot of times, homicide investigation.
Chief, how much less than last year we're getting, or staying the same?
It's right around the same amount of money.
Same amount of money. And this, again, is good for 1 year, correct?
That's correct.
Any questions from the committee?
Upon submission of the grant, what's the time frame for receipt of funds usually?
It all depends on the federal government.
I think it was probably it.
It's usually October, but when there's been a federal budget delay, it's been delayed, but now that there's a 2-year deal, it should be October-ish.
Yeah, it's usually actually pretty quick.
Okay.
We had 2018 money was held up for several months due to budget issues with the federal government. So,
thank you.
Any other questions from council?
I do, Councilor Soto. Chief, humor me, what's the situation in which we might use this software to go through cell phone and social media communications? Just play out an example.
so an example would be if we execute a search warrant on a cell phone, and we extract the data from that cell phone. This allows us to analyze that data, connect different phone numbers from different parties that may be involved in the crime that we're investigating.
Right, but sort of universally post-warrant, I'm asking, we're not going to go astray of any Fourth Amendment protections.
No, anything that we would do from like a live monitoring kind of thing, we'd have to do with either a common police court order or a superior court order.
Thanks for humoring me. Sure did.
Any questions from the public? Tim? Okay. At this time, I entertain a motion to move this resolution to full council. Under 13?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That concludes public safety. Council President?
Thank you. Community Planning Committee, Councilor Smith-Waiter.
Thank you, President Reichenbach. So we'll be just looking at Administration Resolution number 43, 2019, requesting a grant for the Love Your Block facade program. Do we have somebody here who wants to just talk to us a little bit about this?
That would be me.
Hi, Mary.
Hi.
How's it going?
Good. So we are continuing to partner, and this is an effort to leverage funding to support the Love Your Block program in conjunction with SACA and their Elm Street designation. So we are requesting a Keystone Communities grant in the amount of $50,000 for facade improvement that will be designated to the Love Your Block area of Howard Avenue and the Churchtown neighborhoods. This will, as I said, be in partnership with SACA. We'll be working collaboratively if funding is awarded and if this is the resolution is approved, to identify parcels and property owners that are interested in these kinds of facade improvement grants.
Great. Thank you. Rest of the committee? Council? Tim? Public?
Yes.
That's what I thought.
Keystone Community sounds like it is state.
Yes, it's,
DCED?
yes, it is through DCD.
Any sense of how many facades you can do for 50,000?
Depends on the property that we're looking at and what the needs are. It could be something
Do you
as
have a
simple
vote?
as, no, I can't really comment because there's so many different,
Well, let me ask this, is there like a per facade cap, like you won't spend more than $5,000 per property or?
that's a great question and I cannot answer it, but I can get back to you.
Thank you. All right, I then move that this be added to the agenda for the meeting of council on August 13th. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Council President Reichenbach, that's all I have.
Okay.
If I could, just one thing, I just wanted to clarify to Councilor Craig, when you're asking about the snow removal services, I didn't want to leave you with the impression that PennDOT was actually doing this. We are doing it and they are reimbursing us. So we don't have any problem with them reimbursing us for the time and materials. And so Donna Jessup, who does all of our street operation, snow, she's like the snow queen, tracks the amount of hours. So all of our routes that are on state highways are monitored in terms of hours and materials and things like that. So I just wanted to clarify. Okay, just want to make sure.
Chief Snow Fighter, I think is not.
Chief Snow Fighter,
Chief
yeah.
Snow Fighter.
That's a cool name too. Okay, we'll move into committee of the whole. We only have one item on the agenda this evening, which is Council Resolution number 38, 2019, supporting a resolution supporting creation of a National Latino Museum at the federal level. If you see the attached resolution, Councilor Diaz brought this to my attention and we had a conversation about it. There's legislation been introduced in the House and the Senate to establish a Smithsonian National American Latino Museum. Certainly seems like a no-brainer and a long time coming. But similar to the National Museum of African American History, that was established in 2003 and opened in 2016. So these things certainly take time, but getting the ball rolling. Certainly in support of sending a resolution to our elected officials. The rallying around the National Museum of African American History has been so amazing over the last couple of years, and just to see people come together in this country to be so proud again, that was certainly well overdue for that museum, but it just seems like a natural fit for them all, and that's why we're bringing it to your attention. Any comments?
Council President, do they have they selected a site yet?
These bills would designate a site, so this would be the selection of the site. I don't think,
It's going to be in the mall.
but I don't think they have a specific
Right,
location.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. They're looking at, the resolution includes a 50-50 public and private model for the funding, and once the ball would get rolling, I'm sure that would take care of itself. I would think in relatively quick order.
Do they have a price tag?
I think it was it 20 or 50? I'd have to get back to you on that one because I do have it, but I can't remember exactly.
Could you share that information with me as well, please?
Any other questions? From the public? Obviously, this is non-binding. We certainly don't have the resources to build it ourselves. I wish we did. But what we will do is have Mr. Harris forward a copy of a resolution to our elected leaders in Washington. And, you know, every little bit helps to have conversations like this, particularly when we have a city with such an amazing and large Latino population. This certainly is the least we can do to get the ball rolling.
I would like to add also that it was Representative Serrano Jose from New Jersey. He's the one that introduced the bill. And also it was, let's see, it was Senator Mendez Robert, also from New Jersey.
Terrific.
So I'm excited.
Absolutely, should be. If there are no other questions, I'll take a motion to move this to full council.
Motion to move forward?
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
We will move it forward to our next meeting. Last but not least, Bernie, God bless you. One of these days, we're just going to do your clerk report at the beginning. Just because it's the right thing to do. But clerk's report, it's all yours, sir.
Yes, Mr. President. Very quickly, so I researched and found information on Forgotten Bridge in North Lime Street, supplied fire station needs, determined benefits for a former firefighter at the request of city staff. As part of my research role. I drafted the United Nations resolution, resolution on the rights of indigenous peoples, the Lancaster Square naming resolution, amended the resolution for the operations plan and the National Latino Museum that you've gone through this evening. Archiving meeting minutes and agendas. Through the process of doing that, I've requested additional CRIS and Land Bank Authority and Traffic Commission and Board of Health meetings and agendas that had not appeared. Those have been added to the city's electronic archives in the e-code. Parking Authority update, I attended the July 25th meeting and provided a summary of that discussion. EV system issues continue to be a problem for us, and I've been working with Ryan Hunter, the facilities manager, and B&B Communications, and they've been here and trying to rectify those. In other events, I attended the Senate workshop discussion, in which we had an AV issue, and
Thanks for your efforts.
well, sorry I couldn't be more helpful. The pride flag raising and the refugee vigil. That concludes my report.
Just to mind a few things. I just want to publicly thank you, Bernie. You certainly go above and beyond the job description when you're attending events and showing support for city functions. I see you in your life almost everywhere, and that certainly is above and beyond what is noticed, so it's certainly appreciated that you go behind to do that. I'd also just ask that probably over the next couple of weeks, I'm assuming, although it seems to get later and later, I think the Municipal League will be releasing more details about their annual conference in Gettysburg. So if you see that come across your desk, if you could just forward that out to council members again, I wish they would do it earlier, because I mean we're already going to be in August and it's in October, so it's hard for people to schedule things. But if there are council members that are able to make it, you know, there are certainly some opportunities there, and it's not that far away this year. So if you see it, send it out.
Will do.
Thank you. All right. If there are no other questions or comments, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn. Oh, question in the audience.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Is it possible to have public comment? Different than any of the topics that were brought up?
We generally don't have public comment at our committee meetings, but as soon as we close the meeting, we can certainly talk.
Thank you.
Yep. I know it seems like a procedural thing, but give me 2 seconds and we'll talk about whatever you like. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned. Yes, ma'am.
Can you hear me? Is that?
Yeah. You can come up to the table and talk. Come on up.
Come on up and talk, it's fine. I don't think we're rushing out anywhere, so thank you. Sure.
This is an opportunity for me to address the mayor and city council, and I thank you for that. There's a great opportunity for a topic that's pertinent to Lancaster and Pennsylvania that Citizen Climate Lobby is bringing to the attention of the people of Lancaster this coming Saturday. And it is a group of scientists that are going across the country, meeting in different communities across the country to give facts, not to lobby. It's apolitical and it's issue neutral, so there's no policy neutral. And these are scientists, the people that we're getting are from Harvard, Princeton, and University of California, Berkeley. And they come in and they present briefly basics and also the latest of what's happening, and then they open it to questions. The people who have misgivings about the facts that they believe are being presented through the media, or misgivings about their attitude about what can be done about the situation we're in. So I'm bringing that to your attention, and I was asked to give this to Bernie, says Bernie Harris, I hear. If he would please be sure that you get a copy of that you have. So it's at St. John's Episcopal Church. I happen to be clergy at St. John's Episcopal Church, but my hat is steering committee for the Citizen Climate Lobby right now. It's at noon, and bring a bag lunch if you're interested. It should be very, very informative.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Sounds
thank
very
you.
interesting. Absolutely, appreciate it. Thank you for your work on that important issue
Yeah.
that I believe is an issue.
Yes.
I'll take a partisan stand and say that climate change is an actual real issue. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely. How refreshing is that? Just read that thing. Fast-paced. That warms my heart.